written up some answers, but
Okay.
I don't want to read it, so.
All right. Good. Okay. So we'll just jump right in.
Yep.
What is your relationship with the UNSR? Or actually, first, let me specify. When you give your answers, don't just jump right in. Kind of repeat the question. So if I say, what is your name? You don't just say Ryota, you say, my name is Ryota.
Okay.
So with this question, what is your relationship with the UNSR? You will say, I work with the UN Special Rapporteur, yada yada. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, what is your relationship with them? And which consultations have been the most interesting and why?
So we've been working with the U.S. Special Rapporteur on the rights of peaceful assembly and association for quite some time. That special mandate was adopted by the UN Human Rights Council in 2010, and Mr. Maina Kiai, the current Special Rapporteur, was appointed in 2011. So since the beginning of this special mandate, we've been closely working with his office to make sure that the voices from the various countries are heard in the UN mechanism. We know that many advocacy work in Geneva, the UN Human Rights Council, has been dominated by many international organizations based in Geneva. Our job is to make sure that the local groups, independent civil society groups, who are not necessarily available to reach out to the UN mechanism, have opportunity to engage in the conversation and discussion with UN Special Rapporteur. So we've been working to organize a series of consultations at the national level, regional level, as well as global level, to solicit various information that might be useful for UN Special Rapporteur's upcoming reports, solicit specific information that he would like to receive from specific issues in specific countries, and also we'll make sure that information about the UN Special Rapporteur, the reports and its findings, are widely disseminated through the consultation, because we realize that only handful of people in this community knows really about what UN Special Rapporteur does, and what we found is the most important contribution the UN Special Rapporteur makes is to make those information available, so that information can be used as an advocacy tool for local civil society groups, human rights defenders, and advocates to improve the legal frameworks or the political space that they are working in. So one of the interesting consultations that we had prior to, at the moment, let me just start that. So one interesting consultation we had so far is actually with faith-based organizations. Often when we engage in advocacy around expanding civic space and civil society work, there has been a split between so-called political groups working on the governance issues, human rights issues, and the groups that work on service delivery and the humanitarian work. And that split has been actually more harmful in advocating for expanding civic space and the legal reform initiative. So we found that actually the faith-based organization, actually what we found by consulting with faith-based organization is that they actually work with both sides of the civil society sector, the humanitarian work as well as human rights, public policy advocacy work. So we started working with them more and more to see how they can actually bridge these two different sides and join the efforts to expand civic space. So that has been extremely useful but also interesting finding from our experience.
Okay, that's a great answer. We have people within our group that do faith-based engagement as well as service delivery issues.
Excellent.
So they'll find that interesting.
Okay.
Okay, so first, please explain what a soft norm standard is, and then how do they relate to or support freedom of assembly,
Right.
and maybe some examples.
Sure. Soft norms or soft law are not necessarily legally binding laws, but it's more important, however, in encouraging the good practices as well as better compliances with international standards and international law. This is why we engage with the UN Special Rapporteur on the rights to freedom of peaceful assembly and association to build and develop the social norms around the freedom of assembly and association. For example, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or International Covenant on Political and Civil Rights do emphasize the fact that everyone has rights to associate freely. However, it doesn't yet elaborate what it means. So the reports, comments, and other statements that UN Special Rapporteurs does in this mandate actually help to build the social norms that elaborate some of the related issues around the rights to freedom of association. One example of the social norms that this UN Special Rapporteur on the rights to freedom of peaceful assembly and association has been able to develop is around the rights of organizations and associations to access resources. As you know, we've been seeing the last decade or so that many governments around the world are trying to limit the civil society to access the resources, financial resources, material resources, human resources from domestic, international, and foreign sources. So last year 2013, he published a report to the Human Rights Council to articulate why the right to access the resources is vital element to the freedom of peaceful assembly and association. He says that to exercise fully the rights to freedom of association, we need to have resources. We need the materials to carry out what we are set to do. So if we don't have access to, if we don't have the ability to seek resources, or receive funding, how can we fulfill our rights to exercise? How can we fulfill our rights to exercise the freedom of assembly and association? So he was trying to make the soft norm that everyone actually have the rights to freely associate, but in order to do so, and in order to enjoy this, we need to have access to resources.
Okay, very good.
I mean, we have one more example, but I think that's enough.
Yeah. Okay. Can you just tell me a little bit more about what the work you do with OAS, Organization of American States, and some concrete examples of what you have done with them or within Latin America to promote greater protection for these freedoms?
Yeah, so this might be a little bit quick answer, but
okay.
Let me know.
Okay.
So we've been working with the Organization of American States on various issues, particularly related to the freedom of assembly and association. Given that many development projects, such as mining and building dams in the region are taking place and continue to take place, we find that working in the region, protecting the rights of peaceful assembly and association is extremely important. That's why we engage with the Organization of American States and its human rights mechanism, like Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, for various. Okay, I missed this one. Okay.
That's okay. You can start from the beginning.
Okay. So.
Do you work with trade unions?
To some extent.
Okay.
We have partners who work more on the trade union side.
Okay, so when you start over, maybe tie in
That's
like
right,
how the
yeah.
mining is related, how development projects are related.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've been working with Organization of American States as well as its human rights mechanism, like the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, for many, many years. Given that many development projects like mining and building dams are taking place in the region, that American region, we find that it's important to elaborate what it means to people who like to exercise the freedom of assembly and association in the region. Last year in December, there was an environment organization in Ecuador called Pachamama, who was closed by the presidential decree because their engagement in activities of the development project, activities around the development project in the country. The Pachamama organization was trying to work with indigenous people whose lands was affected by this development project. Unfortunately, their office was closed down, although they were trying to carry out their activities internationally. So, we try to raise these cases to the Organization of American States, as well as Inter-American Commission. In 2011, Organization of American States adopted another resolution. This resolution was to promote and protect the rights to freedom of assembly and association in the region. Along with the UN Special Rapporteur on the freedom of assembly and association, we welcome the adoption of the resolution. We also convey the message to Organization of American States to work with and provide the technical assistance. Unfortunately, we have not seen much progress in implementing this resolution. Earlier this year, 2014, we re-engaged with the Organization of American States to start thinking about how to implement this resolution. So, recent General Assembly of OAS in Asuncion, Paraguay, we, the World Movement of Democracy and its partner, have organized parallel civil society organizations to start thinking about how civil society can contribute to the implementation of the resolution. And fortunately, many member states of OAS have also expressed interest and support for holding such meeting by the Permanent Council to share the best practices and different ideas to promote the freedom of assembly and association in the region. So we continue to engage. We'll see how and when that such meetings of Permanent Council take place, but we're hopeful. Thank you.
That was a great answer.
Okay.
I like the ending. Okay, well, let's just keep going.
Sure.
What do you think is the greatest threat to the freedom of association and assembly? Or assembly?
So, okay. Over the last decade or so, we are seeing the global tsunami of the threats on the civil society and civic space. What we are seeing is the more sophisticated legal mechanisms, frameworks, but also practice in shrinking the space for civil society to engage in political, social, and economic activities. In 2007, World Movement for Democracy and International Center for Non-for-Profit Law published a report called Defending Civil Society, and we actually issued a second edition of Defending Civil Society report in 2012, highlighting the 6 major types of threats. One, the legal mechanisms that the legal mechanisms that actually burden or discourage the formation of organization. 2, barriers to prevent organization to fully engage the legitimate activities that they are set to do. The third, the legal frameworks that limit the organization's ability to express their opinions but also engage in the public policy advocacy. 4, we're seeing the limitations on four. We're seeing the limitation on the organization's ability to exchange ideas, build contacts around the world, within the country, with other civil society organizations as well as other entities. The fifth, we're also seeing the bans on or interference with public gatherings. And finally, And finally, we are seeing the laws that limit the civil society's access to the resources that are necessary to carry out their activities. So these are the 6 major types of limitations we are seeing, the threats that we are seeing. And we're happy to say that since the publication of the report, many international actors have come together and initiated various activities to boost the international support for civil society. However, at the same time, we are seeing the growing challenges.
Okay. So, when the Arab Spring came about and everyone was protesting and thought, oh, there's going to be change coming, and then in response, we've seen the governments, I wouldn't say retaliate, but as you said, they've restricted them in those 6 ways. So, do you think that democracy is on the march, so to speak, or do you think it's in retreat?
Well, last several years, we've seen many people coming to the street, voicing their concerns, and mobilizing people to challenge the authorities, hoping that they will bring the positive changes. And unfortunately, the Arab Spring, or so-called Arab Spring, has actually backfired, and many governments actually became more defensive by imposing restrictions on the public gatherings as well as association. And it's an unfortunate trend that we are seeing. Now, this trend is not only happening in the region of the Middle East, it's happening globally. And what we're seeing at the global level is that many governments are simply ignoring or challenging the international norms, international human rights laws that international community worked so hard for the last several decades to establish. And this is the sort of crash that we are seeing at the moment. That the international community worked on the norms to protect the society, but that's being challenged by similar actors that worked so hard to establish for the last several decades.
Okay, good.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay, so the last one on our list was you wanted to tell me a little bit about narratives on the street.
Right. So, while the World Movement and other partners in the Civic Space Initiative works to bring civil society together to engage in the public policy dialogue, bringing reforms in the policies and legal mechanisms, building international norms, soft norms to protect the rights of people to associate freely and organize a peaceful assembly, we realized that we need to reach out broader public to support the civil society. What we are seeing over the last decade or so is the public are not necessarily understanding why the civil society exists in society, what they do, why they receive foreign funding to do what they are doing. There's a lot of suspicions around the civil society among the public, and civil society groups are not necessarily good communicator. We don't work on how to package our message together effectively to the public. So the World Movement through the CSI decided to actually work on visual storytelling so that we can deepen the broader public understanding of what civil society is about, and see how they, the individuals in the broader public, can engage in the space that they have, engage in political, social, and economic activities so that their life can be improved. One video that we recently produced featured a young woman in rural village in Zimbabwe. This okay. Should I start with the sentence, I guess?
One woman in Zimbabwe.
Yeah. So, one video that we recently produced. One video.
It's okay, don't worry.
Yeah, all right. One video that we recently produced features a young woman in the rural village in Zimbabwe. She empowers other young women with the information about human rights, the importance of education, while providing other young women with practical vocational skills like sewing school uniforms for children and selling those uniforms in the market. In the video, she shows how she worked with traditional leaders, chief of the village, and other individuals who may not be sympathetic to what she does in previous years. She was using the space that available to her creatively to engage other stakeholders in her village to actually improve the life of young women. Another video that we recently produced, another video that we recently produced highlights a movement, the national movement in Pakistan, to bring together the issues around the sexual harassment in the workplace and work toward the passing of the law that protect working women from sexual harassment. So what video shows is that that movement involves hundreds of individuals coming from different professions, men and women, political party members, trade unionists, working women in the rural countries from many corners of the country to come together, mobilize themselves, engage with the parliament to pass this law. It took 10 years, and we highlighted the work of this movement in this video. And it's a colorful story, and it shows how people can engage in the space to bring the political and social changes in their society.
Okay. I have another question for you, but
okay.
I can only do 25 minutes on each disc.
Oh, okay.
So
Did I speak more than 25 minutes?
Well, we're at like 23 right now.
Oh, okay.